Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me is Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor, and we are in the midst of a big stretch of exciting Ultimate. We just had the PUL Midwest Championship. This weekend, we're going to focus on Club Ultimate. We got the Pro Championships. The AUDL is in the midst of its postseason. We had 2 games last weekend. We've got the Atlantic playoff games coming up this weekend. AUDL Championship weekend is in 2 weeks. The series starts in 2 weeks. Keith, this is it's a fun time to have an Ultimate Frisbee podcast.
It certainly is, and a far cry from where we were for, months and months.
This time last year.
Yeah, it was tough. Like I had a call to talk about their college season last night. I'm planning stuff with captains. There's a lot in motion and a lot of action going on, and then setting up for more. So the train is on the tracks, and we're going to keep moving. This ride's not ending soon.
So is it things are looking better with your college team?
We're going to have a season, but we are very short on numbers, and I'm still my concerns about the general topography of the college division, especially on the women's side, have not abated based on this.
Yeah, makes sense. This time last year, ranking the top 15 reset handlers of the last 20 years.
I know people make fun of us on Twitter for the type of things that we've had to cover, but we were out here pumping out content in the dead zone. So,
well, we got a lot to get to today. Anna Thorn from the Milwaukee Monarchs and Chicago Nemesis will be joining us a little bit later. And we, of course, are going to make some picks for the Pro Championships. We're going to preview that tournament. We're going to get you ready for the AUDL Atlantic Division games. I'm going to be on the call this weekend. Looking forward to that. And then, obviously we got to talk about everything that just went down at the PUL Midwest Championship. So why don't we start there? PUL, we had Columbus Pride, Indy Red, and the Milwaukee Monarchs meeting up in Milwaukee for a tournament. They only ended up playing 3 games, not the 4 games that the other 2 tournaments played because of just really annoying thunderstorms. It wasn't even that they were that bad, Keith, but there kept being lightning spaced exactly at the times within 10 miles that caused you not to be able to play for 5 hours. So one of the games got canceled, but at the end of the day, Pride beat Indy, Milwaukee beat Indy, and so then when they played each other on Sunday, it felt like a championship game, and I think it lived up to the billing as well.
What a tremendous way to finish it off, right? And to be fair, while the game ended up being pretty dramatic, it was really saved by the post-rain performance, because while it was a close game before that, it was kind of ugly. I mean, it was a slow, plodding game with very few scores, a lot of changes of possession. It did not have a ton of pace to it. So it was a little ugly, but sometimes those games you end up with a really classic ending because the game is very close. And teams are apt to make little runs if they can correct some of the things that were going wrong. And then, once the storms cleared, suddenly the level of play, I feel like, just snapped on. It was just a way, way more entertaining game after that.
Well, it's interesting because, we had this DC Shadow Raleigh Radiance game a couple weeks ago where you had 2 really strong offensive units scoring a lot. And then you come here to the Midwest and you have 2 really good defensive teams in Milwaukee and Columbus. I mean, I thought Columbus's defense was incredibly impressive all weekend, and it was 5-3 at halftime.
Yeah.
5-3. 2 12-minute quarters, 5-3. That's the same. They basically have the same general timing rules as the AUDL. And so you're talking about an incredibly low-scoring game, but it really did pick up. And then we had this amazing finish. I mean, you're not going to see a finish that good anywhere in semi-pro this season. I mean, with Pride scoring with less than 2 seconds to go, and then you got Milwaukee throwing the Hail Mary to tie it up and force overtime. I mean, we have seen some crazy stuff in the AUDL this season, but this is right there with any of that.
Hey, don't sell the Raleigh zone defense point against against gridlock short, they'll force them to play zone offense for 2.5 minutes or whatever without generating a scoring opportunity. It doesn't jump off the page the same way the buzzer beater does.
That's for the purists for sure.
Yeah. But look, again, another game that wasn't necessarily, it was a more defensive battle, and we ended up with a wild ending, an exciting close. But yeah, I mean, this was a remarkable set of circumstances. With 2 seconds left, receiving, going upwind, you have almost no chance of scoring. Almost no chance. Your win probability is below 1% probably. So man, that out of bounds pull really
tough.
That's tough.
Yeah, that's a big mistake, I think. I mean, not only does it go out and allow the team to kind of set everything up, as opposed to having to try to run down the field 80 yards as the team gets ready to put the disc into play. But, if you put the disc down by the goal line, it's just that much more difficult to actually get the throw to the end zone, throwing upwind. So, I mean, you got to give credit, though. Georgia Bosher, what an unbelievable throw that she made in that situation. Absolutely.
I mean, when I'm the coach in me is just screaming, don't let her throw her backhand. Right. And that's clearly what the Mark's task was don't let her throw the backhand. And that turned into she's not going to throw to the backhand side, because somehow Georgia, in just a blink of an eye, I mean, before the Mark could even react, just winds up a flick side backhand and rips it to the end zone. And it's like a hanger, exactly what you need in that situation. I don't know how she got off such a high quality throw under such suboptimal circumstances.
Amazing moment. Certainly one of the plays of the year, and will get watched back on social media many, many times. What'd you think of these teams overall? We've got a chance to see 2 games from each. I have to say, I thought Indy was a lot more competitive than I expected them to be, particularly playing in game 1 against Milwaukee.
It was exciting to watch them, really go out there and compete with a team that we had pretty high hopes for in Milwaukee. But, Red went out there and earned their respect. They had a much rougher time in their second game, but in that first game, they made a lot of plays. They were making some really tough contested catches. Players like Emily Beasley were really getting out there and creating offense for the team in a way that I don't think we necessarily anticipated for them. But that was what we talked about going in, was that this was a team that not a lot of people were familiar with. We didn't even know how much they knew exactly who they would be able to rely on. We talked about Brie Harrison being able to make a difference. We saw how fast she was on the field and how that could impact her team. But it was really a question of who are we going to see step up for this team? And they certainly got some players to step up, especially in this first game.
Columbus also making a real impression. Penny Wu, I think, really was it's like a moment in the spotlight for someone that maybe not a lot of people knew about, but really impressive throwing, high release flicks and offhand hucks, and, really just kind of commanding the offense for the team. And, I think outshone Sadie Jezierski, who's obviously the name everybody expected to be kind of like the obvious offensive superstar.
Absolutely. I mean, it was definitely a breakout weekend for those of us not familiar with Penny Wu. Really just an exciting, dynamic thrower. There's no way around it, but also able to make plays defensively, use her size. So definitely a big weekend for her. And they found some, as to be expected from this team, they found some quality athletes to go downfield and catch those throws. I thought we were going to see a lot of Emily Barrett, and that wasn't necessarily the case for them. I mean, they were distributing the disc across a number of their really tall athletic cutters that they have.
Yeah. So, who's your MVP this weekend? Could you give it to Kayla Strick?
MVP for the whole weekend? I don't think so. I don't think. Although I think when I looked at the stats, Kayla Strick had 3 goals on 8 touches or something in that Columbus game, which is basically exclusively an end zone role. You are a goal line player in that situation, but you do get the biggest goal. For me, the player who probably stood out the most, aside from Penny Wu, and maybe even more than Penny Wu, was Sarah Nolik from Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she just commanded the offense. She was I think the player that felt like she generated the most offense for her team. Great break throws, able to navigate the zone, creative thrower, someone who was really active in the backfield, was not passive, very active player. So she really stood out to me when I was watching the games. What about you?
I think despite a couple of like the out of bounds pull, right? A couple of like big mistakes, I do think Penny Wu is the most impressive player to me on the weekend. And, at the end of the day, the mistakes didn't end up costing. So I think that adds to it. But just really, really impressive overall performance. And I mean, just some clutch moments, right? The no pivot backhand into the end zone for Jezierski to put them up. I think you can ding the out of bounds pull, but like, how much is that really? Like, it was still required like this miracle moment, and then you still had overtime. It's not like that was the end of the game. So I don't know. Maybe it's weird to pick somebody on the team that didn't win the overall weekend, but that was the player I was most impressed with.
And another player to shout out, because I did mean to mention this person and forgot to, from Red, Shani Rosenthal.
Yeah.
The huge sky over Austin Pruka. That was sick. If the Bosher thing doesn't happen, that is the play of the weekend.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was going to say. Yes. I think like sort of the most impressive individual like moment. A Hail Mary is a Hail Mary. And it's like when it works, it's always going to be a super sick highlight. But that play from Rosenthal was, that was like the one. For sure the best play on Saturday.
Now that we've had a chance to watch this a bunch, do you prefer the non-buzzer beater plays, like the PUL quarter ending rule set, to every quarter ends with a buzzer beater that we see in the AUDL?
I do. Yes.
There's just so many ugly ones. So few of them turn out like the drama. And the fourth quarter is the one that you really want, because the fourth quarter is the one you want.
I think you have to have the fourth quarter end at the buzzer. It makes a lot of sense. But I really think that it's more interesting, and there's more opportunity for interesting things to happen with the, team maintains possession. Now, could that mean that you get like conservative offense instead of this crazy throw it to the end zone thing? Yeah, but I do think that overall, I find it a little dull watching teams just huck it up into the end zone, and then sometimes they come down with it and sometimes they don't. It feels monotonous almost in the way that it just like happens every time. I guess you could say the same thing about like, I don't know, NBA basketball, where people heave from half court with 1 second left. But I don't know. I just think that I find it strategically more interesting to have the quarter play out and not just have kind of like people playing free safety and then just throwing it up to the air.
I agree with you. There is something a little like unsatisfying, like inconclusive, incongruent about the clock goes off and then we just keep playing until this team turns it over. There's something about that like doesn't quite sit right with me when I'm watching it, but I do think it's superior to the sloppy, ugly, and potentially dangerous end of quarter situations that we see in the AUDL that like most of the time just aren't exciting. I mean, most of the time it is a bad throw to a pile of people or well short.
Half the time doesn't get to the end zone. Yeah.
Right. They're not visually interesting. And when you do get one, like maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's worth it to have a bunch of wasted possessions just to get one big highlight that's really exciting. But it's not my favorite. So I do think as of right now, I prefer the PUL model.
What do you think of the whole PUL regional championship thing that they did this year?
I really do miss having a season. I don't think that this is like really a replacement for that. But if you buy the premise that a season was not going to work, then this was a good alternative. I mean, we got some really great memories and highlights from this. It was a good chance for players to be integrated into this experience, for fans to get to participate. 3 new franchises get to have games, 2 of which had home fans. So I think that's good for those markets as a chance to set up, a chance to kind of establish themselves a little bit. So good quality content, but I was really missing the narrative that comes with the season. I mean, that's what. I mean, we're a storytelling website, right? Like that's what we do is talk about Ultimate here, and it's almost impossible to build a narrative in 2 games. We did what we could, but it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel weighty. Even if we had another like a Champions Cup thing where the 3 winners play each other, like that would have felt a lot closer to a season to me than just one event.
Yeah, it'd be really nice to have that. Raleigh, Revo, Milwaukee playing for the league championship would definitely kind of like put more of like a bow on things. I think, as given that it feels to me like a season was essentially not possible, like they were not going to start back in June. It just was not going to happen. I'm glad they got something in. Yeah, and I think the games were exciting. I think it establishes some of the new teams. There's a lot of people out there in Milwaukee this weekend. A lot of people come out to Portland. So you have these new teams getting the opportunity to have some spotlight, and we learn about some players, and you just hope for continuity, and like seeing these teams have these players on their teams next year and having a full season next year. I have to admit, like, I'm a little nervous about the PUL. It's like really hard. They have the whole leadership changeover. Then they basically can't have a full season. How do you maintain the momentum going into next year? I think it's hard. I think it's really hard. And I just hope that this is enough to get fans excited, to get teams feeling invigorated by the whole thing, and have the continuation and, feel like you can actually get your feet under you in 2022.
Yeah, missing 2 years of revenue and engagement and momentum, like that's hard.
And you have a lot of teams who didn't even compete, right? Who didn't play at all.
Like what's going on with the Atlanta Soul? I don't know what's happening with them. Like, will Minnesota Strike, will they still be a team? Like, we don't know. It's hard to maintain that momentum. If you're a GM of that organization or something, are you still interested in trying to do it? That you probably had other things going on in your life. I mean, I think that there's
in the Western Ultimate League, we watched Portland just go, right?
Right.
Never played a game.
I think there's hidden value in hosting these events and also getting a chance for the organization to experience, especially with new leadership in play, what it's like to actually have competition, organizing events, working with vendors, working with players, coming into whatever obstacles they encounter behind the scenes. Like, that's an important thing, whether it's working with media like us, figuring out how to bring these presentations together, like not having to do that for the first time when it's the season next year, I think has a lot of value. So, getting in kind of the practice reps, even recruiting observers, all that kind of stuff, like the stuff that we don't think about, that has to be done for the league to be successful and for them to put on a good product when next season comes. So like that extra time to build the infrastructure, to get the practice, to build the connections, like that stuff is very valuable. And you're concerned, given that they didn't get a year last year and are getting only a small slice of a year this year, going forward is totally legitimate, because there's just not as much of that stuff as you would like to see in order to build the continuity that you want.
Let's talk some more PUL. We're going to do it with Anna Thorn. She joins us next right here on Deep Look. Don't go anywhere. Joining us now on Deep Look is a player for the Milwaukee Monarchs and Chicago Nemesis, Anna Thorn. Anna, it feels like you've been on before, but you haven't, so welcome to Deep Look.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So before we jump into talking about some Ultimate, particularly this past weekend and the craziness that unfolded in the PUL Midwest Championship, you had one of the most sort of, fun, like social media present things going on during the pandemic, which was that you were running these cocktail camps. What was that whole experience like? I mean, I talked to you about this maybe a year ago, but I think a lot of people who listen to the show will be familiar with the cocktail camps, or maybe even attended the cocktail camp. How was that experience, and is that something that you expect to do in the future?
That's so funny because I was thinking about whether or not you were going to ask me about cocktail camp this morning.
First question.
First question, here we go. Cocktail camp was a blast. And I think actually over the broadcast this past weekend, Glenn Poole said it best, and that a community was created when there was kind of a lack of space to have community. And I mean, it started as like a small impromptu, like, let's make a few cocktails with some friends, and kind of turned into this like full-fledged thing where every week, more than 100 people would join and we would all do the thing. And it was a really, really fun experience. It definitely opened quite a few doors in my career, and certainly established like many more connections that I didn't have previously. But as Glenn said, like, as much as everybody else was lacking or not lacking, didn't have a space to go to a bar or be around people, it was really nice to provide a space for everybody to come together. And for me personally to also like be involved in that on the other side, right? Because my job is so social. And that was something that I was like severely missing during the pandemic.
And it was a stressful time.
Yeah,
an adult beverage
absolutely.
probably could help a little bit for some folks.
Totally.
So let's get right into it. What kind of drink are we making today? We'll just
I got my shaker ready.
Opening. Yeah, you're ready. I am in the middle of opening a restaurant now. We opened in about 2 weeks, so I've been cranking out the cocktails one by one.
Oh my gosh, that must be such a crazy experience. I wish we could talk about that stuff all day.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
Wasn't the only opening like franchise experience for you
Yes.
recently, getting to play with Milwaukee and the Monarchs at the Midwest Championship Series. First time ever for the franchise pro debut. What was it like, being on the field in that pro environment, having fans in the stands, playing the one-off games? Like what was the feeling like for you?
It was really fun. It was so much fun. And that's going into it. The group of people that I traveled with, we like really didn't know what to expect. We had no idea how many people were going to be there, if we could hear people from the stands on the field. I will say that it was really hard to hear just with like the environment of the music and the announcers and the crowd. It was really hard to hear just on the field in between point calls. So that was a new experience. But we had like a midday check-in after the Indy game. And I checked in with my group of people and was like, all right, is everyone having fun? Because that was a really fun game. That was a really fun environment. From the very beginning with the player intros to the halftime show, just all of it was a blast. We had a really great time.
So, it was obviously we got 3 really fun games. There was all kinds of weird weather that caused big, long delays on Saturday. And then we ended up having to scratch one of the games. But at least in my mind, like, it still felt like we had an actual championship game because both the Monarchs and the Pride had beaten Indy. So, you're playing this final round robin game, which effectively crowns a champion. Very slow first half, not a lot of scoring, weird rain in the middle of the game. And then the game took on a new energy and life in the second half. We'll get to the ending in a second. Did you feel the shifts of energy during that game as you kind of like first half rain, second half thing? Yeah,
I think you nailed it. It was definitely, right off the bat, we went up, I think 2 or 3 breaks, and we held the lead for a few points until I kept joking that it was like, oh, the shower's on, and the shower would turn off. And it was just like, like I would hold my hands out and I could start pooling water. It was just so heavy and so thick. But I think the shift certainly was pre and post rain. I think Pride held onto the disc a little bit better than we did during the rain. So they were able to generate some of those breaks back. And then I think post rain, it was just kind of game on. And we traded points, I think, for about 4 or 5 points until the very end. So the rain really, the rain really did us in. But it created a really fun, cool environment.
What was it like strategically, playing against a team who basically you really have no background on, maybe some of the players, but it's pretty different from where they were 2 years ago. So the film's probably not going to offer you much. You're playing in a new situation with new rules. Like, what was it like trying to adapt to all that on the fly?
We certainly did a little bit of scouting just because Columbus is regionally near the teams that also compete within the Monarchs. So we did know like a handful of players, which I think played in our favor. So we were able to strategically make some matchups. Outside of that, though, Becky Ladone, our head coach, who is so great, called relatively open lines and until she just kind of, until things started clicking, and then she started tightening things up. But I think throughout our past few practices, it was kind of an organic coming together of who would more or less be on what line or who played very well with whom. And she really more or less played to those strengths. She identified who fit into what role, and it kind of just worked.
So we got to talk about this ending.
Oh, yeah.
The game is tied. Sadie Jezierski gets a huge block. Pride has the disc, and they score with less than 2 seconds remaining to go up 1. Mm-hmm. In that moment, what are you thinking? I'm sorry, I don't remember if you were on the field or the sideline for that. I was.
So I actually got injured at the very beginning of the game, right after I scored. You can certainly make fun of me for it later, but I tweaked my knee celebrating my goal. I know, it's really, I went back and I was like, it was really the chest bump. It was the chest bump after I scored. So I was off the field. I was on the far sideline closest to the stands. And I remember watching Sadie cut up line. She scored. Or maybe I'm confusing it with a different point. Either way, I just remember the clock going down and being like, they're going to hold it. I thought they were going to hold it, and then we would just go into overtime then. I didn't think that they were going to push for the end zone with such little time left. And then when they scored, I truly was like, that's game. That had to be game. And it sucked. I don't think it's on camera, but I sat down. I was like, bummer, we just lost. That sucks. I was done.
Yeah.
Then they pull it out of bounds. And that man. I know for me, I was watching and when they pulled out of bounds, it's like, oh my gosh, they're going to have a real shot at this. Like they're going to get an end zone shot. Did that like reinvigorate you?
So I knew our call was to get Georgia the disc. And Jenny was her dump. So I think the original call was for Jenny to center it to Georgia and then Georgia just shoot it. But in rewatching the film, I didn't realize this happened on the field. You can see Georgia literally look at Jenny and say, just go. She didn't need a dump. So she was like, and Jenny kind of hesitates and is like, are you sure? And Georgia's like, yeah, go to the end zone. And I was standing on the sideline. I don't even remember with who, but we're all just like clutching everybody's arms and watching Georgia pick up the disc. Everybody's just standing in the end zone, holding it, waiting for the disc check from Iris, and then just ripping it. I was like, this is out of a movie. Like, this is like, I swear the disc was flying for 25 seconds. And I just remember watching it and watching the path and trying to overanalyze. I'm like, who's it going to hit? Who's it going to hit? Who's it going to hit? And as I was looking, I saw Kayla reading it. And she's backing up and she's backing up. And just the way that she timed it, I basically was like, right, I had a full shot. It was maybe like 5 or 10 yards off from the end zone. Full on shot of Kayla catching it. And we just lost it. I don't think I keep saying this, but I think by far it is the coolest sports experience I've ever been a part of. It's just unreal. Absolutely unreal. Yeah. We
were losing our minds in the production booth. So there's like multiple things to this. Georgia throws a forehand side IO backhand.
Yeah.
And still gets like a
unreal.
perfect shape to the throw to give it the like maximal opportunity, right? It couldn't come in blade. It didn't like push out to the sideline. Like it came right into the middle of the end zone, basically. So that was number one. Amazing.
It was also windy.
Yes.
That's the thing is like,
and that was an upwind throw.
That was an upwind throw. And that's what is not that I'm a thrower compared to Georgia, but like as a handler, I'm like also thinking and taking into consideration that we had a hard time. That entire game was upwind, downwind. And that was the upwind end zone. And I think it's hard to tell that from the replay, from the video, but it was a good 10 mile per hour wind that was hard to shoot upwind.
Especially with like an awkward side throw.
Oh yeah.
On the IO, like cross body. So then, and you can't really see this in the video either, because we looked at it in super slow motion, and you don't really see this. But there's a photograph of Kayla Strick coming down with the disc, and the disc is like full on, completely bent over in a horseshoe shape, as other, I don't know, defenders also trying to get the disc, and there's obviously a huge crowd of people. And the fact that not only did she catch it, but that she caught it clean after, not getting stripped, to me is like just as amazing as anything else in this whole sequence.
Oh, after she caught it, I was waiting for a call,
Sure.
I thought somebody would call foul, somebody would call strip, et cetera, et cetera. It's clean. It's wild. Clean. And the way that she had to have used her entire body force to pull it down and maintain the grip is just, that shot is phenomenal. Mark showed it to me. I asked him immediately. I was like, did you get that picture? And he was like, yeah, I got that picture. And he scrolled through and all of us were like, this is a great photo.
That's like, could be photo of the year. Like,
yeah.
I know we haven't got to Club Nationals and stuff yet, but that's going to be up there.
Yeah, that's going to be.
Did you know in that moment you were going to win the game at that point?
I think we had momentum. I think we absolutely had momentum.
It's got to be strange. I mean, a second ago you're like, oh no, we lost, and now you actually have to, you have to go out and play again. It's like, okay, now suddenly we have to go do the things that we were doing before, and like you kind of like you have a come down, but you also like want to keep the momentum going. I know you weren't able to get back on the field, but what's it like for the team to try and balance that and get back on the field and like play again? Are you in a great position? Because it feels like, oh wow, we have second life here. We have all the momentum in our corner. Or is it like, okay, let's take a breath and see if we can win this game?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think definitely the phrase, I like the phrase second life. I think we needed it. Obviously we needed it to have to play again. But I think after that, it was pretty smooth. I don't even remember OT. I think it was just smooth sailing. I think did we win OT 2-1? I don't even remember. Yeah, definitely second life. And then also we took a breath and we're like, okay, this is just a game to 3 essentially. So we just have to go out and do it.
Yeah. Final score is 12-11. So I think that's right. I think it was 2-1 in the final OT period. What do you take away from this weekend overall? I mean, obviously this is not a full PUL season. This is not a Monarch season. This is kind of a unusual one-off thing in a post-COVID, regional championship series return to play. So does this feel like it's like setting the franchise on a good path? Are you excited to try to come back and play a full season next year? Just thoughts on what this all means.
Yeah, we talked about this at the very end. We barely just got started is kind of how it feels. I hope everybody returns. I would be really interested to see the trajectory of our success given the actual PUL calendar. With traveling and playing 1 or 2 games a weekend. I would also like to compete against other teams. I would like to see how we line up against Radiance or Gridlock or Shadow or any of the teams that we obviously didn't get to see. I think it sets us up in a really good place moving forward.
Was there a lot of 2022 talk? Was there a lot of like, okay, I'm hyped for next season, or like I'm definitely coming back, or was it kind of just celebrating the moment?
No, it was mostly just celebrating. Like, that was a really cool thing we did, and let's hopefully keep doing it. That was more or less the rhetoric going around.
So, do you think that this is the future of Elite Ultimate PUL as opposed to Club?
Interesting. I don't know about the PUL. I do think that the AUDL is more of the path for men's ultimate, for Elite men's ultimate moving forward, as younger players come up. I don't know about the PUL because of how spread out it is, geographically speaking. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it too much in the context of women's ultimate.
Given that this was your first time, getting into play in this type of environment, is there anything from Premier Ultimate League play that you feel like you would like to see replicated or integrated into Club Ultimate, whether it be rule changes or whether you'd like to see more one-off events or something like that? Is there anything that you feel like you really liked from PUL play that you're not getting from Club?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like the one-off. Just physically, it's I don't know how you couldn't, honestly. I like the timing. I was skeptical of it at first, but I really like the timing of quarters, and having just like a distinct amount of time to play and not necessarily having a point cap. I think that allows for a different strategic development throughout the game and utilizing quarter breaks to make adjustments as opposed to using a timeout, say.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like the PUL's system of end of quarters, allowing teams to keep possession until it either is scored or turned over. Mm-hmm. I find that to be an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah.
So now we start to look ahead to the club series. We're just, a week away, basically. We've got Pro Championships coming up this weekend. Nemesis just played at the Elite Select Challenge. How are you feeling about all things Nemesis and, what's to come here in the series?
Yeah, feeling good, feeling great. We are really looking forward to Pro Champs. We have picked up 2 former rostered players to play with us this weekend who are not competing with their respective teams. So it'll be fun to have them back. And we, outside of that, rostered a lot of youngins. And it's really fun to have that influx and also take the time this season to prioritize development. It is a very hard mental shift to think about, okay, like our objective this game, yes, it's nice to win, but like we are hammering development and roster depth and growth, and that has been it has been really, really fun. I really, I love Nemesis. I've loved every roster I've played with, but I truly think that this is one of my favorite rosters I've played with. We also have new coaches. I think that's an important distinction too. Ryan Watson and Sabrina Hoffman have come in, and they have a great strategic background, and having them implement and making adjustments to, the group of returners and also including the rookies. They're doing a great job.
You're not slow rolling us with these mysterious anonymous players. It's not like Cameron Grimm, Leanne Hoffman, or about to show up or something. Kelly Johnson. I'm trying to think of who are other Nemesis greats. Lindsay Hack. I don't know.
I will say two former Nemesis, and one friend of Nemesis, I think is a good way to phrase it.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll have to wait to see the rosters.
You'll find out.
and these are just players specifically for Pro Champs that won't be on your series roster.
To be determined.
Interesting. Ooh.
Yeah, to be determined.
I kind of want to follow up on something. This was just something that's occurred to me here. But in your experience, how much of an impact on the team experience, on a team's capability, do you think the coaching staff has? You're in the midst of a change right now. Like, how much of it is really just comes down to the players, and how much of it is really like the coaches are making this thing happen the way that it's happening?
I think that's a good question. I think in the past, it was more coach dominant on Nemesis. And I think this season there's more of an open relationship between coaching and leadership in terms of like strategic development or, whatever it is we're taking into a game. That being said, I think we have coaches for a reason, and we have coaches to make calls or adjustments during games when we are focused on the game. And it is nice having coaches for that reason. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, what are you looking forward to most at Pro Champs?
I think having good matchups. We played Rival, we played Bent this past weekend or 2 weekends ago. I'm really excited to see Schwa just because I have some friends on Schwa that I haven't seen in a while. I think in the past we've matched up very well against Schwa. Since I've been on Nemesis, we haven't beat them. And I personally would really enjoy a win over Schwa. I'm excited for our Phoenix matchup a lot, especially now that we're friends with Austin and Kayla. It'll be, nice to see them again. And I am excited and looking forward to see how we match up against Grit.
Great. Awesome. Well, Anna, thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck this weekend, and see you in Boulder.
Take care. I'll see you soon.
All right. Anna Thorn with us here on Deep Look. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Thanks again to Anna Thorn for coming on. Always great to talk with Anna, and nice to get her perspective on this past weekend and getting ready for the Pro Championships, which are coming up. Go ahead, Keith.
It's right around the corner. I like it. It's weird. Like, usually we're so far into the club season in some way that just doesn't feel right.
Well, it's been a kind of a weird year, just in a variety of ways.
It's an understatement, Charlie.
Yeah, but Pro Championships is here, and this is the full thing, right? USAU is rolling out the whole media red carpet. There's going to be games streamed on ESPN platforms for the semifinals, 3 finals. Ultiworld's going to be there. We're going to be streaming games all weekend long, including the other 2 semifinals. And of course, pool play and early bracket play. You can follow along with everything at ultiworld.com/live. It'll be free on YouTube. We're also filming games for tape delayed release as well. And really, we have more footage from this club season than maybe ever. In a way, that's because there have been so many splintered tournaments. You have little tournaments happening with just one division. And we've gotten last weekend, I think we filmed 4 different tournaments, or maybe that was 2 weeks ago now. 4 different tournaments on the same weekend. So tons and tons of footage. Apologies to those of you who are still waiting for some of that footage. Our video editing team is getting through it as much and as quickly as possible, but it's like 25 games. It's a lot to get through. More games to come this weekend. Lots of top teams coming out. Some playing for the very first time this year. Can't wait to see what Molly Brown looks like. And this is our first kind of like elite women's competition at a TCT tournament. You could argue it was Elite Select, but like here we've got Brute Squad, we've got Schwa, we've got Molly Brown, we've got Phoenix, Nemesis, and Grit. So 6 teams. It's not like a full pack division, but teams from all around. Can't wait to see what Brute Squad looks like. Obviously, this will be our very first time seeing Molly Brown. 6 teams as well in the mixed division. It's Shame, Mixtape, BFG, Public Enemy, Arizona's Lawless, and Love Tractor. And then there's 12 teams in the men's division, including Many of the top teams, Sockeye, Machine, Revolver, Pony, Bravo, Truck Stop, Rhino, and Dig are your top 8 seeds. So, Keith, what are you looking forward to this weekend? As this really does feel like, okay, the series starts in a week. We're getting in games. This is when we're really trying to test ourselves before we go into the series and head towards San Diego.
That's one of the things that I almost am curious how teams, particularly outside of the men's division, will approach this. Now, especially in the women's division, where a bunch of teams, this is their first tournament, are they going to say, like, we need to be in game mode so that we can get reps doing that before we get into the series? Is Molly Brown going to say that, or are they going to say we need to be in open line mode and figure out what we have with these people and get development reps and those kinds of things? Are they going to be doing that, or are they going to say, hey, we need to play like the team that we're going to try and be at nationals so that we can build that system too? I'm very curious what they will do, and Phoenix will do, and Brute Squad will do. So I think the women's division has the most of that going on, but to some degree, that's true in the mixed division with Mixtape and BFG, who we haven't really seen either. The men's division feels like it's almost like a different season since they've been playing for so long and have gotten in a lot of reps. So I feel like they're kind of insulated from that. But that's like one of the first things I feel like I want to know about this weekend.
It makes a lot of sense. And I think it's true. It's really different, right? Sockeye and Pony played Pro Elite, US Open, and now they're playing Pro Championships. That's a normal season. That's like what they do in a regular year. Whereas, Molly Brown is playing for the first time this weekend. So that is such a different experience, and you have to assume the teams feel like they're at very different parts of their year. I mean, I'm sure Molly Brown has been practicing and playing internally for presumably months at this point, but it's different to go out and play at a tournament and test yourself against other competition. Let's take a quick look at the streaming schedule. Saturday, 9 a.m. Local time, that's Mountain Time. Mixtape versus Lawless in the mixed division. At 11, it'll be Revolver versus Truck Stop in the men's division. And at 1, it will be Brute Squad versus Phoenix in the women's division. Which of those are you most looking forward to, Keith?
I think I gotta say Phoenix and Brute Squad. First look at both of these teams, there's a little bit of, oh man, Brute Squad's going to be a juggernaut again this year and probably mash most teams in any meaningful game until they get to the final and play Fury or whatnot. That's what it feels like this women's club season could be. But there was some preseason Raleigh Phoenix hype, justifiably.
Certainly.
So, debut for situation for both these teams. I have a little bit of pause, if only because a lot of times I feel like we get hype for first looks at teams and then they come out and they play sloppy. So I hope that's not the case. They're going to have a couple reps in. It's the last round of the day. So they've gotten a couple of games in, but that's the one that jumps out to me. But all of these are interesting games.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind the Radiants, won the PUL East tournament. That's not exactly Phoenix, but there's lots of Phoenix players on that team. Looked good. I know that Phoenix is dealing with a good number of injuries right now, so that could maybe make it a little tougher for them to beat an already very stacked Brute Squad, but I agree. That one's going to be super exciting. I'm also looking forward to getting a kind of a closer look at this Arizona team that's kind of been making waves this season in the mixed division. And this is also our first look at Revolver. Truck Stop, I thought, played better than I expected them to play earlier in the season. How is Revolver going to play? I mean, this team is very young. They've lost a lot of their veteran talent that's been carrying the load these last few years. I'm not sure that I see a team that's going to make semis in this roster, but I feel like one of the things I'm learning this year is that, when you go 2 years between club seasons, it turns out that like some of the players who were good 2 years ago have gotten old, and some of the kids who were 22 years old are suddenly the best players on their team. So what is that Revolver side going to look like? It's easy to say, no Cassie Rasmussen, but I still think like, okay, they got a lot of players coming out of this Cal Poly Slow pipeline. There's some very good talent on that team. How does it translate to club? Is a chance for us to see. I mean, this is not Bo and Ashland Revolver, but I do think, Truck Stop feels like a really good matchup to see where they are.
Charlie, if you want to say Riley Kirkman Davis for Player of the Year, just say it. Like, just say the words. It's okay.
But for real, like when we saw him early 2020, and he was tearing it up in the college division as a freshman, and so now where is he going to be at? We'll see.
Now we got Michael Ing too. Evil. I don't know. Is Revolver like join the Evil Empire? Or like, I don't even know anymore.
I think that's done.
I think it's over.
I think joining Pony is joining the Evil Empire now.
That's fair. It's a very different energy, though. Both of them. It could be both. It's not an exclusive title. All things though considered, I am interested to see what Michael England, how he performs with this Revolver team.
Maybe the marquee game of the weekend on the stream before semis is Schwa versus Molly Brown. Rematch of the 2019 quarterfinal that Schwa won, upset Molly Brown in that game. Do you expect more fireworks in this one? And what has to be the game that both teams have circled?
Why not? First look for the wider audience at the now that Molly Brown has doubled the number of Cardenas sisters they have, which
100%
is
100% increase in Cardenas
big.
sisters.
The math adds up. That's a lot of Cardenas. They're very good together. I feel like they have a lot of reps with Claire Chastain. I don't know why your primary offensive look isn't Dominator with those three. Everybody else get up. I don't even know why you put 4 other players on the field. Just put the 3 of them out there. See what happens every once in a while. Save everybody else's legs. That should be a very dangerous trio. But Schwa has already gotten some reps in. So how much will that help them? We came into the year, we were a little down on Molly Brown. We were high on Schwa. Is that going to hold? I'm really not sure. This is a game I don't want to pick. I don't want to be on the line for picking this one.
It's going to be fun. I'm going to make my pick. I do think Molly Brown wins this one. I was a little skeptical of Molly Brown, but the fact that they picked up Valeria, I think, is a big deal. And I take Molly Brown in a close matchup. They also have the motivation edge here, I think, because of the loss.
I would take Molly Brown too.
But it should be a good game. It should be a really good game. Let's make some picks here, Keith. As we look overall, I mean, I think we're probably going to be matched on taking Brute Squad in the women's division to win it. I've got Brute and Molly in the final.
I think I've got. I have to look at the path here just briefly.
It's round robin.
Okay. So you just don't want to pick the 4th place team, yeah. Okay. So I think I've probably got do I dare go with Phoenix even with the injuries, even in their first tournament? No. Okay. I'm gonna go Brute Squad and Schwa in the final.
Okay. So you think Molly Brown's going to win the pool play game and then Molly is going to win the semi, is what you're telling me?
Yeah, let's go with it.
All right, I like it. That actually could be really strange because Schwa. No, that's not the last game. There's one more pool play game at 10.
Oh, you were thinking they might play the back-to-back?
I thought they might play the back-to-back.
Why even try in the first one? Because you already know.
You're right. Rest legs.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be the matchup either way. It still could end up shaking out somewhat like that. Mixed division. Who you got?
I'm all aboard the mixtape train.
Yeah.
I've picked them as my team in the beginning of the year. I have no reason to back off that.
Who do you have in the final against them?
Same format, right?
Same format.
I think I'm going to go Seattle rematch here. I'll go Shame and BFG.
I don't see that happening. You mean mixtape and BFG?
Or sorry, mixtape and BFG. Yes.
Yeah. Shame has been really solid this year.
Yeah, they're good. I'm certainly not saying they are not.
I'm just trying to decide if I think that Public Enemy is legit enough to make the final. because they've been good too. I mean, obviously, this is the team that had all the SFI West stuff going on. They beat Mischief, though.
Hey, don't sleep even on Love Tractor, man. They have been a team that we see pop off in the regular season randomly. And they have that McShane Conquer combo now.
Yep. I'm skeptical, though.
That's fair.
Too many times that they just didn't get it done in the big spots. Now, this is not,
this isn't the big spot. This is why you pick them.
It's fair. I'm going to go just top 2 seeds. I'm going to take Shame and Mixtape in the final. I think they're the best teams. And I think Shame still looks like a semis team at Nationals from what we've seen so far. Okay.
That's very possible.
Men's division, a lot of the teams we've already seen, a lot of the teams we saw at US Open, but now we're plus Revolver, and somehow they're seated ahead of Pony. Not really sure how that worked out, but Soccer Machine, Revolver, Pony, Bravo, Truck Stop, Rhino, Dig. And then, you got Lotus and Temper, Fungi, and Inception. Temper is interesting. Can Temper get a win in that Pony, Bravo, Temper pool?
Who'd you say the last 4 seeds were? You said Temper, Lotus, Inception, and Mallard 2?
Mallard 2 declined. They didn't want to attend. They were asked. USC was begging and pleading with them to come because of just the brilliant season they've been having so far, but they declined.
Okay, understandable.
Yeah. So who you got, Keith? Did we see Sockeye Machine Redux?
I can't really get myself away from it. I want to pick Rhino to have a good weekend. I'm thinking they will finish as they will be the 3rd best team here. I think they can outplay Pony.
Okay.
I don't know why. It's just a total gut instinct.
They beat them at US Open.
I think that they could be the 3rd best team in the field. I think Bravo's good too. But I just don't see a way to get around Sockeye Machine right now. With Sockeye winning.
Just a very
maybe this is the time when Machine gets the win. It feels like during the regular season, this is what would usually happen is we get that game. But Sockeye's just looked not unbeatable, but they've looked like the best team pretty unquestionably.
Worth noting, Pony's probably going to be shorthanded a little bit because they're going to be missing their Empire guys who are playing Saturday in New York for the Atlantic playoffs. Truck Stop has a bye in the first round, and I believe their DC Breeze players will be flying in first thing Saturday morning to then have to play Revolver in that first game. So that's an interesting wrinkle on that. I don't know how that changes the handicapping of that game. Look, something tells me Machine is going to struggle this weekend. Machine obviously played really well at US Open, but the Union team that's mostly Machine really did not play well this past weekend. And it feels like they're kind of in a little bit of a middle of this. I don't want to quite call it middle of the season. Now it's the playoffs and the AUDL, but they really didn't look sharp. Defense didn't look sharp. For whatever reason, I think somebody else is going to get into that final, but I don't know who to pick. That's the problem. Do I trust this Pony team? Probably not, because they're probably going to catch Sockeye in semis, and I don't think they're beating Sockeye. So I'm going to go with... Give me Truck Stop. Maybe that's crazy. Sockeye Truck Stop. That's my pick. Truck Stop only lost by 2 to Machine back at US Open. 15-13. Am I crazy?
I haven't. It feels a little bit crazy from where we were the beginning of the season on Truck Stop, looking at their roster. But if you've seen something that's changed your priors, that's it's not like the rest of the field is so good that you need to pick somebody else, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I feel like it's going to come down a little bit to who wins games. If Rhino can beat Machine in pool play, then I think Rhinos could be the team that makes the final.
Well, so that I didn't look at the format when I was getting hyped on Rhino, and if they can't beat Machine, is that going to put them on the path to playing Sockeye?
Well, there's pre-quarters. So let's see. If Rhino loses to Machine and finishes second in Pool B, then they will play the winner of the Pool Winners crossover game, and the Pool Winners crossover game is 1A, 1C, and then 1B, 1D. So honestly, because of those crossover games that are just for placement in the bracket, it's very difficult to really assess who's going to play who in the bracket.
Good thing that I said I think Rhino will be the third best team and not third place team.
All right, I'm changing my pick because of all the wacky format. Sockeye Rhino. Portland, Seattle.
Yeah.
Portland, Seattle.
I did it.
I'm doing it. I think this Rhino team is real interesting. They kind of ran out of steam at US Open in the second day, but I think that they have the pieces to be really good, and I think they'll have learned from that and do a better job managing energy for this tournament. 3-day tournament.
I'm curious to see, because of the way that the men's season has developed a little bit further, like I think we can use this to tell us more about what these teams can be than maybe we are in the other divisions. I'm also going
to be curious to see if teams have figured out something to do defensively against Sockeye, who's kind of just run over everybody so far this year.
Got to find a way to answer Mac Hecht, apparently.
Man, I mean, people are trying to gum up the lanes, right? Machine gumming up the lanes, and Mac Hecht's like, okay, I'll throw hammers. Like, what are you going to do? It's hard to beat a team that can beat you in multiple ways. Simple as that. But, everybody's got the tape on Sockeye now. Everybody's thinking about how are we going to try to counter them. And I think you see teams try to figure that out. I don't know if it's going to work. Team's so talented. But, yeah, I still think they're going to go undefeated all the way through here. They did lose a game earlier this year to Ponies, playing very open lines at tournament number 1. But I think they win every game this weekend.
I have no reason to argue with this.
Yeah.
I mean, they have been the best team.
All right, well, let's turn our attention now. Again, games will be on ultiworld.com/live. Hope you tune in. Looking forward to it. I'm flying out there on Sunday, and we'll be a part of the broadcast team for the semis and finals. And we'll be, again, streaming. Lucas Sirio and Kelsey Percy will be calling the action on ultiworld.com, as well as the USA Ultimate and Ultiworld YouTube channels. So check that out, and can't wait to tune in. AUDL Atlantic Division playoffs start tomorrow. Friday night, it will be Raleigh playing at DC. Saturday night, it will be Atlanta playing at New York. Ultimately, things shook out as I guess you would have expected. New York won on the road at Boston, but oh my goodness, did they try to lose that game? Did they ever try to lose that game? New York -5.5 was a ridiculous line. And Boston really should have won, Keith.
They had some shots. They couldn't capitalize, though, unfortunately for them.
Yeah. DC mopped up on a kind of weird, bizarro Tampa team, which was the weirdest, worst line of the year. DC won by 12, coming in as 3-point favorites.
Gave up a single break, I think, and scored 12 breaks.
Before we make our picks for this weekend's games, let's look back at last weekend to talk a little bit about what went down. San Diego beats Dallas at home after an almost immaculate first quarter, and their offense was just very sharp. John Nethercutt, playing in his second game of the year, Keith, looked fantastic. Like he never lost a step. I am loving the John Nethercutt comeback year so far. I mean, he was straight up terrible in 2019 playing for Bravo, and he's back and just throwing laser beams down the field on a rope.
What a turnaround. I mean, the comeback train is on. Now he's in a new place. He gets the win over Dallas that he's been seeking since his time with the Flyers. We all pegged Dallas, and I think that was a little bit of bulletin board material from what I could tell from social media. I mean, we were getting a little bit of chirp, which is totally fair. It was the best game that I've seen them play all year, to be honest. The Growlers played their best game, and Dallas did not play a particularly good game. Dallas had some opportunities in this game to try and wrestle back control, and they just could not execute offensively.
I mean, I picked Dallas.
We all did.
But I mostly picked Dallas because I felt like the game was a coin toss. And I don't necessarily know that I disagree with my decision, even though it was wrong, obviously. The thing is, as I said last week, Dallas has proven to us to be incredibly inconsistent. They've never really looked like the Dallas team that we expected, and that's exactly what we got again. Now, if San Diego had also played kind of to the inconsistency that we've seen from them over the last few weeks, I think it probably would have been a very close game. Ultimately, San Diego's really strong start and just general ability to come up with big holds when they needed them was the difference maker. And I've been high on the San Diego, Southern California offenses for years, right? Condors has had a great O-line. The Growlers have had a great O-line. I think they're going to bring this great O-line to championship weekend now. And I don't think I'll be picking San Diego. We'll wait and discuss once we know the matchups. But I do think that they are a tougher team to deal with than it may look at first glance, because when they're hitting, they're going to get their O-line off the field in like 10 seconds. And that's what we saw a bunch from them. And they also were able to apply defensive pressure early in the game and convert all their breaks. And once you set up that lead, you're in a really good position, and they rolled out to the win.
And I think that was particularly helpful against Dallas, who just looked like they were not comfortable playing from behind. Their roster was a little odd with the injuries that they had, some players not playing at 100%, but San Diego played the better game pretty much from start to finish. Brutal. I can't let go of this. Dallas is down 12-9. They somehow get a turnover with 4 seconds left in the second quarter, right before halftime. And they pick it up in the chaos, 4 seconds left. They're already past their own midfield. So they have more than 40 yards to go or whatever. And they pick it up and get a fast break huck and score, but it doesn't count because they call a timeout. Why would you call a timeout in that situation? A horrendous timeout. Of course, the defense comes out of the timeout set up with double teams on the mark, with all their tallest players on the field or whatever, and Dallas doesn't get a look at the end zone. Instead of thriving in the chaos of a transition turnover and a chance to score with 4 seconds left. It's your best chance to score with 4 seconds left. They could have brought the lead within 2. I think it would have felt a lot more manageable in the second half. That was a really just brutal error. I couldn't let it go.
I think the Dallas injuries are like one of probably the biggest issues the team had, but I was not impressed with the coaching this year. I thought it was a problem all season, to be honest. We've seen Dallas be incredibly well coached in the past. I think that's part of it, is that, in past years, it feels like they were really getting the most out of their roster. And this year, it really felt like they were getting the least out of their roster. Now, it's hard, right? You got the transition, you got the year off, new coaching staff, whole thing. But I don't know that, Jim Davis was the right person to lead the team, to be honest.
And I had a tough task.
Incriminations, right, after the season and the way that it went down.
Potentially. But it's a very tough task when you have personnel changes the way that they did with the injuries that they had. Of
course.
But the talent level, there's just no way to say that this team underperformed its talent. There's no way to look at it and not feel that way, right?
You're saying that it did underperform its talent.
They did underperform their talent.
Yes.
It's
100%.
hard to question that.
100%. Yes, agreed. Let's turn our attention to the Chicago-Minnesota game. I think if you just look at the final score, you're like, okay, yep, Chicago beat Minnesota. Pretty standard stuff, to be expected. They were playing at home. They were the better team this year. But that does not describe this game at all. I got the chance to watch this one in person, and I got the chance to watch Minnesota be the better team for like 44 minutes of the contest. Like, better intensity, better focus, better execution, better coaching, the whole thing. And they had built themselves a solid 2 to 3 point lead that kind of wavered back and forth, but they were not giving up breaks, and it really looked like they were going to win the game. And then they just completely collapsed, and Chicago rattled off a bunch of breaks in a row and pulled ahead by 2, and that was it. And it was just It was heartbreaking to watch, for Minnesota fans. And I mean, you got to give credit to Chicago, but they did not deserve to win this game. They didn't.
It was odd to watch. They looked so listless for the first 3 quarters of this game until their backs were against the wall. Like there was no sense of urgency to their play. Pat Trowise was somebody I thought stuck out in this issue. And he had a number of turnovers. They just seemed like very casual. And I couldn't figure out why. I don't know if that was a confident, like this is how we maintain our poise and our confidence as we play like we're not affected by the environment or the other team. But they were getting their asses kicked. Yeah. And like there needed to, it didn't feel like there was any level of like accountability or fire from this team.
Nick Vogt was just destroying them. And they kept playing kind of a soft, switchy defense.
And they were blowing switches like left and right.
Everywhere on the field. And I'm sitting in the stands like saying, why are they not playing hard matchup? Like they have Nate Goff and they have Drew Swan. Like they have these huge dudes and they're like just trying to switch everything and people keep getting lost in coverage and they get beat deep. Like what? And like even little stuff, like at one point there was a 3-on-1, one Minnesota player, 3 Chicago defenders, and the Minnesota player came down with it. Like there was just, it didn't feel like the effort was there. It felt like all the breaks were going Minnesota's way, but then tough down the stretch. A couple really tough calls by the refs too. There was a play that looked like it was inbounds that got called OB along the sideline down the stretch in the fourth quarter. And then Andrew Roy got called for that stall out, which, Keith, do you think that was a full 7 seconds?
I don't know. I mean, you can go to the tape and look. I mean, it was definitely felt close. You could tell that Roy knew he needed to get the disc off. I was a little surprised that it came back as a stall, but I can't say that I've looked and counted. I mean, to me, it was the 2 possessions before that where everything came unbuttoned. I mean, Nick Vogt, for all the incredible game that he has, gets the disc on the goal line up 3. There's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes left or something like that, and gets double teamed and just tries to step through and throws a pass into the ground. And he's looking for a foul call. The replay does not look like a foul to me, so I don't know what he's looking for, but turns it over on the goal line and they get scored on and give up a break.
Yep.
Lead gets quieter. And then on the next point, Josh Klain tries to throw a huck right away, directly in the lane. Nate Goff just swats it right down. It was a horrible turnover. And that was when you started to feel like, oh no, they're going to blow this.
I mean, I messaged somebody about this and they were like, classic Minnesota sports job. I mean, it's just, you got to feel for them, but like part of the game, of course, is being able to maintain your poise amidst that pressure that comes at the end of games, the mental pressure, the increased pressure. Because credit to Chicago, they finally started playing hard defense at the end of the game. Like the last 6 minutes, they played hard D after not playing much hard D at all the entire rest of the game. And Minnesota cracked. They cracked. I mean, you got to give a lot of credit to the Minnesota coaching staff, who I thought had an incredible game plan to go out there to make Chicago uncomfortable. They tried a lot of different stuff. They did the roller pulls. They had the snake in the grass, and it worked.
They did. It worked.
What a perfect time to pull out a snake in the grass. Who sees a snake in the grass coming in the the regional playoff game?
Not Pavlianis, apparently.
Not Pavlianis. Brian Vanuka comes, creeping off the sideline. Amazing.
It's just, if you just get it, you get the thrower, and the thrower's just their lizard brain is on. The eyes light up. They see a wide open deep receiver. They're like, "Oh, free assist right here."
They blew the coverage. Yeah,
yeah. Now Chicago should have tried it, given that they were blowing switches all like a wide open cutter would have been nothing new for their defense. So they should have been trying it because, I don't know. That was, I think, part of the Minnesota game plan. Like they schemed, it felt like, to attack the switches. They 100%. Were preying on them with these deep cuts that were really well timed. But yeah, coffee is for closers,
Yep. And at the end of the day, like, you just have to, your players have to make the plays. And Minnesota didn't make the plays down the stretch. And I don't think they got any help from the refs, but like, you can't just throw easy short field turns, and you can't turn it over on the goal line. There were multiple points at which a single score probably seals the win. And instead, it was just a total meltdown. And you could see the wind come out of the sails for Minnesota. And it's like they almost gave up once they were only up 1, and they felt all this momentum drifting away from them. They couldn't find an answer. And you have to be able to go out and have your O-line find an answer in that spot.
Yeah, it was a tough watch.
Does this Chicago team have a chance to win the title?
Not playing like this, hell no. Yeah. I mean, if every team they're gonna play is gonna cough it up at the end, then sure. But they need to find another gear. This was not it for them.
I think it's very likely they thought they were going to comfortably win against this Minnesota team, and then bring intensity as a result.
Minnesota's maybe the least talented team in the playoffs. Like,
I think
they're a good team.
I think Dallas is worse.
Maybe.
I give Minnesota points in a Minnesota Dallas game, but
I'll tell you what,
second worst.
Chicago. Everybody Chicago is going to play from here on out is probably more talented than Minnesota.
Yes,
or Dallas. So, I think that the talent is there. I think that, like, we saw some really good players like Shriwise, like Peter Graffi, not play very well. Even Pavel, I think, didn't have his best game. Paul Erders was like maybe the best player for them, but
Paul Erders made some big mistakes early on.
He did. He struggled at points, and so same is true. Like, Nate Goff wasn't getting a lot of defensive pressure, but he ends up getting 3 blocks. But not a lot of big offensive plays from him either. It was not a great game for anybody on Chicago.
Yeah.
But I think that those players can play better, and if we see them tighten it up, the talent level is clearly there.
Clearly.
But I don't know where the motivation is.
Well, we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can bring to championship weekend. All right, let's make our picks and discuss these playoff games. First up is DC Raleigh, round 3. DC's 2-0. They just got a crazy double overtime win a couple weeks ago, and now they have to play them again. They say it's hard to beat a team twice. It's really hard to beat a team 3 times. Is DC, they're minus 1.5 point favorites on DraftKings. It feels like the right line. Do they win this game, Keith? Should they be considered the favorite given that they're 2-0?
Oh, yeah. I think you got to make them the favorite, right?
Yeah.
They're playing at home. They are 2-0 in the matchup. They say it's hard to beat a team twice unless you're clearly the better team. Like, unless you clearly have the matchup advantage. I think that saying is as fraught with peril as the hockey saying that 2-0 is the most dangerous lead in hockey. It's just mathematically untrue. So I think that I don't know why you can't make the DC Breeze the favorite. I think that all year, I know I personally have harbored skepticism about this team because we've never seen it from them before. And maybe this is kind of what you were talking about when we were talking about Club Ultimate. There's a status quo bias. I just expect the teams that I've seen be good to continue to be good.
Sure.
And the teams I've seen be medium continue to be medium. So, like, I just have never quite been able to fully buy in on this DC Breeze team because we've never seen them prove it in the cauldron of fire of the playoffs. Raleigh's not exactly proven it either.
Definitely not.
So the skepticism is real. Who do you think played the better game when you saw them play in DC last?
I thought Raleigh largely played better.
That's how I felt too.
But all the big plays came from DC. Not all. Anders Junks made a couple huge plays for Raleigh. But, I mean, the Reese Bergeron block and the Johnny Malk's layout throws it to Merriman and Skies. I mean, there were a lot of big plays on DC's side, and that big play advantage seems to have swung towards DC, and that's why I'm leaning DC, both because they've won these matchups prior and because we've seen them have the mentality to win these games. Raleigh has struggled in those situations for the most part, not only this year, but historically, of course.
Oof, it's a tough ask. I mean, both of these teams are really, I think, really young. Like, they count on a lot of really young players in big spots. You look at DC's lineup. It's Johnny Malks. It's Jock Nissen. It's, AJ Merriman. These are not seasoned vets who've been around the block a bunch of times. But that's true of Raleigh too, right? Like they're counting on Saul Yannick. They're counting on Anders Jungst. Like these are the players that are central to these teams' success. So I every time I feel like I found maybe a reason to think the Flyers could have an advantage, it doesn't pan out. So all the logic right now says that I should pick the Breeze. So why am I still feeling like I want to pick the Flyers? What is that? What is that about? I can't figure it out, Charlie.
I mean, the argument is like if they tighten their lines and they bring out some looks that they haven't shown earlier in the season, and that's going to happen with Mike DeNardis, is that enough to disrupt DC? Maybe, but I think I think Daryl Stanley's going to have looks that he hasn't shown either.
Maybe the thing is that I feel like we've seen DC play their best, and I feel like we haven't seen it from Raleigh.
So
maybe that's what it is.
And so you think that they're going to hit their peak at the right time and win.
God, that is a very slim window to count on.
I mean, that is obviously an incredibly tight matchup, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah, of course.
2 1-point wins, like double OT, could have really gone either way. Raleigh probably should have won the game. Poor clock management. Really tough. I feel like the home crowd advantage is enough for me to say I pick DC.
I kind of feel like that too. I feel like both of these teams are fairly evenly matched and like have similar strengths, similar weaknesses. So I feel like I got to go with the team that has the momentum and the home crowd. I mean, I really want to find a way to pick Raleigh, and I can't do it. I want to back up my instinct, but I just can't find any way to do it. So I think I got to go with DC here too.
The lines on these games are interesting because DC is a pretty heavy money line favorite. I think they're minus 185. But if you want to bet them minus 1.5, you're getting plus 135. So what's your best bet on this game, Keith?
I think you got to go for the spread here, right? You got to go for the plus money. I think.
Yeah, I don't think you want to lay minus 185 if you can get plus 135 and only have to.
Yeah, if it were minus 115 or 110, like a traditional spread line kind of thing, maybe. But I don't think I can go minus almost what feels like minus 200 when I have plus 135 on the other side to buy an extra point and a half or an extra point. Not even, it's a lot to get paid out for an extra point.
Right.
Now, both of these games are gone to 1 point, but that doesn't feel like a sustainable trend. But the matchup is really tight. But even if the teams play evenly, I think there's a fair chance that it's a 2-point game or a 3-point game.
Yeah. Really interesting. So let's talk New York, Atlanta, and then I have a question about 1 point and the value of it. New York, minus 1.5 point favorites. Very similar situation, kind of heavy money line favorites. But then getting plus money on the spread at minus 1.5. They're playing at home against the Atlanta Hustle. These two teams met just once this season, and Atlanta getting the win, and it was kind of not New York's best lineup, so I don't know how much you want to read into that. We still haven't seen playoff lineups as of today, so we don't know, for example, is John Stubbs playing, which I think is actually a big question
He's pretty good.
To know. I mean, he's the best player on the team. So if he's not playing, I think that definitely reduces Atlanta's chances. Like, I think he's probably worth a point. But anyway, regardless, let's assume everybody's playing. You got New York, Atlanta. Who do you take here, Keith?
It has not been it's not been so pretty for Atlanta down the stretch, huh? When's the last time you feel like they played really well?
At DC.
That is a long stretch to go without playing really well.
Yeah.
I can't pick them based on that. I mean, even that means that even when they beat New York, they weren't playing that well. So I got to take New York here. They're at home. Like we said, we feel like Atlanta has not played well recently. I don't know if that means that the rest of the league has kind of solved them, that the novelty of their zone has worn off in some ways, that people are seeing it on the tape, that maybe the team just wasn't able to sustain the level of execution that they were getting from the offense. But I think I got to take New York here between the two of them. These are just teams playing a different form right now.
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta, 1 point win over Pittsburgh, 2 point loss to Raleigh, 1 point loss to Tampa.
I mean, that Tampa loss was...
Yeah, I mean, that was a bizarro lineup. It doesn't really mean anything. But I think it doesn't inspire
kind
confidence.
of impacts the team.
Yeah. I just think ultimately these teams played very close to even, with New York traveling and I think playing the second game of a back-to-back, if I recall correctly. And so now Atlanta has to go on the road and try to beat New York at home. I just don't see it. And I've been a little skeptical of Atlanta all year, although I've certainly upgraded them after their win at DC. But the big question for me, can the Atlanta zone disrupt this Empire offense? If the answer is yes, they will have a chance to win. If the Empire does a good job of playing against the zone, there's no way that Atlanta can beat them, because I think the Empire defense is going to do enough. They're going to get enough chances. They're going to get breaks. And the Empire offense, when it's at its best, is the best in the league. Whether they can handle this zone, which I think is the best in the division and probably the league, that's going to be the big question. But now they have a full contingent out there. Their full O-line will be playing, as opposed to having to put people in weird spots like they did down in Atlanta, and they still almost won. So that's going to be the big question for me. And I think that's why I lean New York here. Again, taking home field. I feel more confident that New York is going to win than I feel that DC is going to beat Raleigh.
I agree with you there. And then, we've seen the ups and downs with New York this year. It feels like maybe they're getting past that as they turn more and more to their star players. It feels like they're more and more relying on Jack Williams, Ryan Osgar, and Ben Yott to carry the load. And
why not?
I think if they want to win, that's what they should do. Yeah. No one's been able to cover Ben Yott for like 4 weeks now, 6 weeks. I don't know. He's just been tearing through the league. The last time that these teams played, he had 5 assists and 4 goals and a block. Even though he had some turnovers. It wasn't exactly like a sterling performance for him, but the zone didn't prevent him from getting his. Osgar had 6 assists and 5 goals in that game. So, I think that they're going to continue to try and activate those guys. Like you said, there's some weird personnel stuff that we saw like a lot of. Saul Rushmeyer-Bailey on offense, and we saw some Ben Katz on offense when they were playing against Atlanta last time. I think you're probably going to see less of that this time around and more reliance on that core group along with Elliot Chartok. So, I feel better about New York than I do about DC, that's for sure.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. So what's your best bet here?
Between all of them or just in
this game?
Just in this game? What's the money line? Let me see. The money line is New York minus 180, but they're plus 120 for 1.5.
Yep.
It's a lot closer than the DC 145 to minus 185 difference. But I still don't see a reason to give up that much juice to get a point. So I got to go New York at home.
So you're taking them minus 1.5 plus 120.
I got to take the plus 120. Yeah.
I think that's probably my best bet. Although I do think these lines are pretty tight.
I think that it is more likely that this game will be decided by 1 point than by 2 points. But I think that probably not to the degree that a plus 120 to a minus 180 indicates. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's what I want to get to. In the NFL, when you're talking about betting, you talk about key numbers. When you're betting spreads, -3, -7, or +3, +7, considered pretty important numbers, because more often than not, games will end there because of the scoring separation of 3 points for a field goal and generally 7 points for a touchdown with the extra point. So the new extra point rules have changed this a little bit, but these are still considered key numbers. And often if you've got a team and they're -7.5, you might not want to bet them. You're waiting for that half point. Do you care? Do we think it makes sense that you should pay a lot to get plus 1.5, right? Because that's what we're seeing in these lines. If you want to get the underdogs and get that 1.5, you have to pay a ton to get it, like over $1. Does it make sense? Are AUDL games that is one a key number? Is I guess what I'm saying. Is winning by 1 that much more likely than winning by another amount?
It's a great question that we probably don't have a lot of data to answer. However, and unfortunately, I think we probably have less data analysis capability than DraftKings. There's got to be some sort of engine driving them to arrive at these numbers, because this is not traditional to me. This is not what you see in most sports. So there's got to be something that they figured out that they felt like, 1 is a common, is going to be that key number. Looking at past scores, last weekend we had 1 game decided by 1, New York, Boston. 2 weeks ago, there were 3 games decided by 1 out of 8. Raleigh, DC, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, San Jose, LA. Then if you look at week 11, there's 1 game decided by 1 out of 8 because DC, Tampa didn't happen. Yeah, there's 1 game decided by 1 point, New York, Philly.
Do you think that there's maybe I don't know whether to call this a bias or just like a correct analysis by DraftKings? DC and Raleigh played 2 games and they were both decided by 1, both DC 1-point wins. And Atlanta, New York was decided by 1. It was a 1-point win for Atlanta. So do you think that means we're likely to see 1-point wins here? Maybe.
I imagine that helps. And we have to remember that lines are not necessarily, these lines, maybe this is more true for ultimate lines where the lines don't move very much. But the lines are based on the betting market, not necessarily the likelihood of outcome, right?
Sure.
Now, like we said, they probably think that since the lines don't move much based on the betting market, these are probably pretty close to what they expect to be the likelihood of the outcome, right? But it's a weird phenomenon. I bet that if you went back through the data, you would see that 1 and 2 point games are like the most likely outcomes, right?
Probably. Especially in this year's more competitive AUDL. And keep in mind, right, if a game goes...
But they feel like equally likely to me, right?
If a game goes to double overtime, it's guaranteed to finish with a 1-point margin. If a game goes to overtime, it's very often going to finish with a 1-point margin.
But how many overtime games were there this year? Like,
yeah, that's true.
I don't know, 5 out of the 120 games or something? I don't know. Like,
I hear you.
I do get that is a potential outcome. But... And maybe that feels even more likely in the playoffs where team quality is very tight, right? Like at this point, you can feel a little more confident that you're going to get close games because there's no bad teams anymore.
All right, well, our picks are in. We're both taking New York. We're both taking DC. And championship weekend is coming up in just over a week.
So. Yeah, let's take the home favorites. Home favorites are only 8 and 17 this year or something. So
against the spread, Keith.
Against the spread, yes.
All right, well, that is going to do it for this edition of Deep Look. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us for our subscriber bonus segment where we talk a little bit more about club division versus semi-pro, some of the rules changes that it feels like have made semi-pro games just a lot more watchable for fans. So we're going to talk about that and changes that club really needs to implement in our opinion. So discussion of that coming up in our subscriber bonus segment. You can subscribe for less than $4 a month at ultiworld.com/subscribe. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.